Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Gourmetkim. I'm inspired by everything around me when I create recipes. And today, the inspiration is coming from the Mediterranean. I'm making lamb köfte. The first time I tried lamb köfte was at my Turkish friend's house, and oh my, it was delish. And ever since, I've just been hooked on it. And of course, because I'm Gourmetkim, I've added my own twists and touches to it. You know, I'm all about the fusion cooking. So I'll be using a few of Ghanaian spices and ingredients in this Mediterranean inspired lamb köfte. I'm going to take you through the ingredient list. So lamb köfte is basically meatballs, like the regular meatballs that we know in spaghetti, the Italian meatballs. But of course this one is Mediterranean. They are meatballs on steroids. I'll be using about 10 different spices, so imagine the flavor punch we'll be getting in here. And this is why I go on to say that it's on steroids. And of course I'll be sharing my tips and tricks to keeping it tender and juicy and of course delicious. So let's begin. So remember when I said tips and tricks? This is one of the tricks to keeping it flavorful. I'm going to be using regular bread and not dried breadcrumbs, because what this does is I'm going to cut the edges off because we don't need that, and just use the middle bit. So I'll just put this aside. What this does is it soaks up all the juices from the onion and the water and the garlic, and then it plumps up the crumbs of the bread, the fresh bread crumbs. And then when it's added to the lamb köfte, this is what keeps it juicy, because the water is retained in here, and so it keeps it from drying out. So this is what I do. I just cut the edges off as I did earlier. I'll roughly chop it with my sharp knife, like so. You don't have to use the knife, you can just keep shredding by hand. But I don't use dried breadcrumbs because they are dry. Why would you want dry in this? So this is what's going to keep everything juicy, because it retains all the moisture from all the ingredients, from even the lamb's own juices. So this is about good enough. And I'll just drop that in this bowl. Set that aside and then chop my onions. So you can actually choose to grate the onions instead of chopping them. It makes it even more juicy. Sometimes the problem with grating is that it makes it bitter because it releases all the sulfuric acid in the onion. So I prefer to chop it by hand and chop it or dice it finely, like so. Now, there are no rules when you're chopping. I decide to chop mine like this. First, I slice them, and then from the slices, I make my little dices or little chops. Like so. So that's good enough for me. I'm just going to add that to my bread, and then all the juices from the onion will be released into the bread, keeping it plump and juicy. So now that I've added the onions to the bread, I'm going to grate the garlic. I'm using I like a lot of garlic, so you can use between 2 to 5 cloves of garlic. I'll be using, I think, 4 cloves. But if you're not so big on garlic, just feel free, use just 2. And 2 is just about enough for 1 pound of ground lamb or ground beef, if that's what you decide to use. So this is about a 4-inch ginger root, and I'll just use about 2-inch. So when I grate it, I should get about, yeah, this by eyeballing is about, give or take, 2 teaspoons of ground ginger or minced ginger. So I'm adding that. I think it's about 1.5. And then another secret to tender meatballs, tender and fluffy meatballs, is to add about 1 tablespoon of water to your bread mixture. And like I said, it's part of the whole moisture and juices thing that we've got going on, where the breadcrumbs, this fresh breadcrumb, is going to soak up all the water or the moisture and keep it plump and juicy whilst we make the meatball. I think I need about 1.5 tablespoons of water. And then I'll use my hands, get in there, and just mix everything together. So already you can see my breadcrumbs are wet. This is what you want. You want the breadcrumb to soak up all the juices, all the water. from the onion, the water, the ginger, and the garlic. So once we've got this ready, we'll just set it aside whilst we prepare the minced meat or the minced lamb with the spices. So I'm using about 1 pound or half a kilo of minced lamb. You can use ground beef. Now every time I buy ground beef or minced lamb, I prefer to buy the kind with the fatty bits, because fat equals flavor and it will keep it from becoming dry when we bake it or fry it or however you choose to cook it or grill it. So this is it. And then these are the spices that I'll be using. Now I like to crush all my spices because I like how they release their fragrance when they're crushed instead of whole. So this is crushed coriander. I've got crushed cumin, which is very Mediterranean, these two spices. And then I've got anise seeds, which is also very Ghanaian as well as Mediterranean. Now this one is also called nkitinkiti in Ghana, or if you speak Twi. And then I've got some smoked paprika for a bit of smokiness. Crushed rosemary, because I like herbs. Chili flakes. Allspice, which is very Mediterranean. I'll be grating some nutmeg into my mixture. And oregano, which is also very Mediterranean. I also have curry powder here. Now this is hot curry powder. I like the hot kind. And black pepper, of course, because you can't cook without black pepper. And I like it freshly ground. Salt. Fresh chili, which is optional. If you don't like heat, please leave this out. And then another trick to keeping it very moist and tender and fluffy is baking soda. Now if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I use baking soda on almost all my meats. So just a pinch, you don't need much or you're gonna taste the baking soda. So this, a little bit of that added to the lamb is just gonna keep it nice and juicy. Now if you choose to not use baking soda, you can just use an egg yolk instead. You know, I don't want to use both because lamb is a tender meat on its own, but if you're using ground beef, you may need to use a pinch of the baking soda and then the egg yolk for the fat, which is going to render some tenderness to a mixture. But I'll use the baking soda instead. So I'm just going to be adding everything. I'll start with my black pepper. I like to freshly ground my pepper because it has more flavor. If you buy the kind that is already ground, they tend to go off after a while. So this is why I prefer to use the freshly ground, just in the pepper mill. And then I'll be needing about half a teaspoon of curry powder, and then a pinch of allspice. Allspice is very strong in flavor, so you don't want to use too much. Maybe 2 pinches, depending on how big your pinch is. About 1/4 teaspoon of dried rosemary crushed. And I'll use all the oregano. This is about half a teaspoon of dried oregano. And my nkitinkiti or anise seed, I'll use about half a teaspoon of anise seeds. And coriander, because it's so earthy and fragrant and delicious. So I'll add about another half a teaspoon of coriander. So about half a teaspoon of smoked paprika for the smokiness and a little bit of heat. And then chili flakes for heat. So this one you add however much that you need or however little, or you can absolutely leave it out because the black pepper will add a little bit of heat too. It adds flavor too, so if you can, please add it. So 2 pinches of chili flakes. Now I only added 2 pinches because I'll be using the fresh one as well. I like heat, so if I wasn't using the fresh one, I'd add everything. I'm going to grind some nutmeg into it, freshly ground. Like I said, I always like almost all my spices freshly ground. This is about 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then the pinch of baking soda. So a pinch is about 1/4 teaspoon. And that's what I'm going to add. This is baking soda and not baking powder. This is bicarbonate of soda, the kind that you'd keep in your fridge to keep it from smelling bad, or use it in laundry, or use it to brush your teeth. That's the kind, not the baking powder for making cakes. This is also for making cakes, but remember it's baking soda and not baking powder. And then for the salt, it's really a matter of taste, but I think for about 1 pound of ground beef or ground lamb, I need about 1 teaspoon. From eyeballing, this is about 1 teaspoon salt, and then finally I'm going to be adding my fresh chili. Well, not finally, I think I need some herbs because you cannot make Mediterranean without herbs. So I'll be adding a little bit of mint and parsley to this mixture. So whatever chili, fresh chili that you have on hand, you can use that. This is a very common Ghanaian chili. It's very fragrant, it tastes really sweet, and it's hot. So you can use Scotch bonnet, but if you do, please use a little bit, or Jamaican hot pepper. Or just use already prepared chili sauce or chili oil. It's really up to you. But I like my chili fresh because it's more potent and more fragrant. If you like to see big chunks of chili in your meatball, please, by all means, do it the way that you want to do it. So I'm adding my chili. That's a lot of chili, but that's because we like chili around here, okay? And then finally, I'll be adding my herbs. This is fresh parsley, and this is fresh mint. But if you choose to use only one kind in your recipe, that's totally fine. But I recommend, if you want to use only one kind, I recommend you use the parsley instead. But I like the flavor of the mint, just a little bit, not too much. So I'm just going to chop them together since everything is going in one bowl. Just roughly chop everything. It doesn't matter if you get some stems in there, it's totally fine. The stems are edible and yummy too. So just roughly chop your mint and your parsley together. Like I said, if you want to make it easier for yourself, just use a food processor. So add your freshly chopped herbs to your lamb mixture. And then this has been sitting for about 5 minutes now, and it's all nice and wet and moist. See, all the juices that are coming out of it is what you want. Don't be afraid of the water. I'm sure you're probably thinking water in meatballs. Yes, it will keep it juicy and it won't ooze out that much. So now you get in there with your hands. I like to get in there with my hands and just mix everything together so I get all the spices and the salt and the chili and the herbs in every corner, in every bite, in every mouthful. If you see bits of bread in the mixture, it's totally fine because when it bakes, everything will almost disappear anyway. So feel free to make this whole process in the food processor if you want it fast and easy. But sometimes this is my workout. I like to work out like this so I can look forward to the end result, which is the food. You understand? This is my workout for the day. And there's something about cooking and touching your ingredients and feeling it. It's just therapeutic for me. So although I could use a food processor, I choose to do this by hand because it's therapeutic and I like it. I like to connect with my ingredients, you understand? After about 10 rounds of kneading, this is the mixture that I have. And it smells so good. Now, please do not taste this whilst it's raw. You could get sick. So if you're not sure about the salt content or the spice content, you could just take a little bit, a sample like this, and fry it on the stove or pop it in the microwave until it's cooked. Then taste it for seasoning, then you can adjust your seasoning. Now I've been doing this for a while, so this is perfect for me. I don't need to really test it. But by all means, if this is your first time making it or you're not sure about the salt content, just feel free, make a little ball like this and fry it in a little oil on the stove top, and then taste it and make sure that it's got the perfect amount of salt or spices that you need. This is perfect. I'm going to dip my hands in water to help the meat not stick to my hand so much when I'm forming it onto the skewers. You can use wooden skewers soaked in water for about 1 hour to prevent them from burning whilst you're cooking it on the grill or in the oven. But I choose to use metal skewers. These ones, you know, Mediterranean style. So the trick is to dip your hands in water to prevent the meat from sticking so much. You see the difference from the first time and now? So that's what you do. You just grab, you make a log of the meatball mixture, and then you place your skewer, metal or wooden, into it like so, and then using your hand, form the meat around it into a kebab shape or kebab. So just keep working around it like that. If it starts to get sticky, dip your hands in water again and keep going. Now at this point you can totally form them into balls like this instead and fry them or bake them. But we're making kebabs, so this is what I'm doing. So this is my lamb kebab, my köfte kebab. You can make little dents into it so it looks proper Turkish or Mediterranean, like so. And then keep it aside until you finish everything, all the mixture. So I'm professionally a baker, and this is a trick of mine that I use when I'm grilling things in the oven. I use whatever kind of fat that I have on hand. You can use butter or margarine or vegan-based butter, is really up to you. And then just take a cooling rack and then smear the margarine all over the cooling rack like so. Just rub it everywhere, onto every corner like so, back and forth. And then apart from that, you don't leave it there like that. You just get some flour, all-purpose flour, and dust the battered or the greased rack with the flour, the front and the back, like that. Top off the excess. And here you've got your insurance. This makes sure that your lamb köfte doesn't stick to it when it's cooked, because you know sometimes if you don't grease it beforehand, when it's cooked and you're trying to take it off, it peels it off and then it sticks to the pan, and then what you've got is what? Scrambled lamb meatballs. So this helps to keep it secure, and then it comes off very easily. You take your prepared lamb kebab or beef kebab and place it on the prepared cooling rack where you greased and floured with the margarine and the flour, like that. And that's it. You don't need extra fat on it because lamb has got enough fat in it on its own. So just leave it like so. Pop it in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius for about 10 minutes only. And because lamb is very tender on its own, you don't need to cook it for a long time. The longer you cook it, the tougher it gets. So this is enough. So 200 degrees Celsius, make sure the rack is at the top closest to the heat so that we get a nice browning on the top of the lamb. Pop it in and let it bake for 10 minutes. And now for our Mediterranean inspired chickpea salad. These are the ingredients. Now I'm going to make a quick pickled onion for our salad by submerging the onions, the sliced onions, in vinegar and a little bit of sweetener. I'll be using honey. You can use sugar or maple syrup or any sweetener of choice. And what this does is it tames the pungency of the onions. You know, the onions tend to get very sharp and the bite is sometimes overpowering when you eat it. So what this does is it tames it and it makes it more enjoyable and adds a little more sweetness to the already sweet onions. Well, it brings the sweetness out more like it. So I've got my sliced onions here, and then I have my vinegar. So I'm just going to submerge the onions. It doesn't have to completely cover. This should be about enough. Just add the onions to the vinegar, and then a touch of honey. A hint. So that's about what? A drizzle? About 1/4 teaspoon of honey. And just mix the onions together with the honey and the vinegar and keep tossing, and then taste it. Is really delicious. When I know I'm using raw onions, mostly this is what I do. But if it doesn't bother you so much, you can just completely leave it out, but trust me, if you choose to do this, you appreciate it. I'm setting this aside for about 5 minutes whilst I prepare the other ingredients. So here's a bunch of parsley. Now, Mediterranean salad, you cannot have a Mediterranean salad without lots of herbs. Now, because this is mainly Turkish and they love parsley, I'm going to be adding a lot of parsley. But if you don't care for parsley that much, please use a little, but please don't leave it out. So give it a rough chop. Now this step is optional, but I like the flavor of fresh coriander or cilantro. And I'm going to add a small handful to the chopped parsley. Okay, so now that I have all my herbs chopped, my parsley and my coriander, I'll just dump them into a large bowl, good enough for a salad. So it's been 10 minutes now and the lamb is sizzling and looks really, really, really good. This is about all the time that you need, and can you see how juicy? It's nice and tender and juicy and fluffy. So our baked lamb köfte is ready, and now look at that juice. Look at all the fatty goodness from the lamb fat. I'm going to cut through it so we can see how juicy it looks. Look how tender it is. It's fully cooked, but it's still juicy and tender. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a bit of my quick pickled onions and maybe tomato. Pop it in my mouth first. Oh. Give me Sprite to wash it down. This is really good. If I do say so myself. Perfect juiciness. You can have this on its own, or you can eat it with a salad or in a sandwich or part of a main meal. I'll put that aside and continue with the salad. So now that I've added my parsley and my cilantro to the big bowl, I'm going to take my tomatoes. I'm using cherry tomatoes, but feel free to use Roma tomatoes or any kind of tomatoes that you have, but it has to be fresh, of course, because it's a salad. You can leave the cherry tomatoes whole if they are very small, or not, just it's really up to you. I like to cut it so you can see the seeds because it's pretty to me. So I'll try to cut most of them in half and probably leave some whole for the salad. Now add your chopped tomatoes to the bowl. You can leave some whole and half some. And then I'll add my cooked chickpeas. You can choose to use canned chickpeas. All you have to do is drain the chickpeas and give them a light rinse and strain it in a strainer or colander until it's dry like this, but it's cooked. And just add that to the salad mixture. Next, I'm adding some cucumbers, seedless cucumber. If you choose to use cucumber with seeds, just make sure you remove the seeds. So I think the cucumber is enough, and then I'm adding some bell peppers. I'll do yellow, green, and red. So halve the bell pepper and then remove the pith, the white pith of the pepper, because we don't want it, we don't need it. With the seeds and the pith, the white pith removed like this, clean, yeah? And then you cut it into your desired shape or size. First, I cut them lengthwise and then I turn them and just give it a rough chop. So use as much as you like of the yellow or the red or the green, or you can just use one kind, just green or just red or just yellow if that's what you have. I like my salad to be colorful, so this is how I make it, with colorful ingredients. This is optional, but I like to add some olives to make it more Mediterranean. So these are green olives and they are pitted. Now our quick pickled onions are ready. So all you have to do is just, well, using clean hands of course, squeeze the excess vinegar from it and just add that to your salad. This remaining vinegar with the onion flavor we're going to use in the dressing, so please don't discard it yet. So I'm just going to give it a quick toss without the dressing now, just to mix all the ingredients together, like so. And they smell so fresh, like a garden, like the garden I'm standing in right now. So I give it a toss, then I set it aside, and now we make the magic dressing. This is where all the flavor is going to come from. Well, most of the flavor, because the ingredients have their own flavor as well. So I'm using about, I think I'll need about 1 whole lemon. So I'm just going to squeeze that into my measuring cup. So I'm adding some of the pickled onion vinegar to it. I'll need about 3 tablespoons. So I'm just eyeballing it. Okay, so we've got lemon, vinegar, and then olive oil, because you cannot have a Mediterranean salad without olive oil. Okay, and then I'll need about 1/4 cup or 1/3 cup eyeballing, and then a hint of honey, just a hint. So I'll give it about ½ teaspoon of honey, and then curry powder. You can choose to use cumin instead of curry powder, but I like the color that it gives to. When I mix it, you see how beautiful this dressing looks. I need about ½ teaspoon of curry powder in this dressing, and then I'm going to use this jar to shake it and emulsify everything and bring them together until it's homogeneous. You can choose to use a whisk if that's what you have, but I like to shake it in a jar. So after I've measured all my ingredients, vinegar, olive oil, lemon juice. Oh, and I almost forgot, you need a pinch of salt. So I'm adding a pinch of chili flakes or pepper flakes, and then a pinch of salt to taste. Maybe 2 pinches, because my pinches are small. So in this jar, you cover it. You can use any old plain jar that you have, and just shake it. Just put in some muscle work. And here you go. This is the dressing. The curry powder has given it a really nice mustardy kind of color, and that's what I absolutely love. Well, it doesn't only add color, it adds flavor as well. To the salad mixture, the vegetable mixture, I'm going to add my vinaigrette. And then give it a quick toss, like so, like that. This is a yummy, refreshing salad that is good for any occasion. I could eat this for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, as a snack. And there you have it, chickpea salad. This salad tastes better, even better after it sits for a while. So all you have to do is transfer it into a bowl that has a tight fitting lid, and then cover it and leave it in the refrigerator for a couple of hours before you serve it. By then all the flavors would have married really well and have a party in your mouth. We're making sweet potato flatbread. Now it's super simple to make. It's just like any regular flatbread recipe. We just replace half of the flour with the sweet potato. What it does is it makes it a little bit healthier, and it makes it even taste better. This particular flatbread recipe is so versatile. What I usually do is, after I make the flatbread, whatever I have left over, I just cut them into little triangles like tortilla chips, and then I fry them in hot oil until they are crispy, and I just snack on them. Or you can use them to scoop some guacamole or hummus, or just, you know, put some salsa on it, or just stew. Okay? All right, let's begin. These are the ingredients. So super simple, you don't need a lot of ingredients. We need about 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Measure, this is 1 cup. Add that to a bowl. And then equal measurements. You measure about 1 cup of sweet potato mash. So what I did was I just cut the sweet potato into cubes. I added water to it. I didn't salt it because I want to control the salt when I'm making the bread. And then once it was tender, I mashed it with a masher, and here we have it. Mashed potato, mashed sweet potato. You're probably wondering why this sweet potato doesn't look red. That's because it's another variety that we have in Ghana, and this is the sweet potato that we have, but it tastes the same as the red or the orange kind. So just add 1 cup of this Banku sweet potato to the mixture. And then about half a teaspoon of salt is what we need. Now I'm going to eyeball it. This is about half a teaspoon of salt. And then plus some freshly grated nutmeg. I like to add nutmeg in this, but you don't have to, because I like that earthiness that it adds. Don't run away from me. It makes it very warming and earthy and just like a proper baked good. So I'm just gonna mix everything together with the sweet potato, the flour, the salt, the nutmeg. Just mix by hand. You don't need any tool or equipment, any special tool or equipment for this. You don't need a mixer. If your mixture seems dry, as mine is right now, you just add a little bit of water, a little at a time, about 1 teaspoon at a time, until the mixture comes together and forms into a dough ball. Now, sometimes you may not need water depending on what kind of sweet potatoes you use, because some sweet potatoes contain more water than others. So this is why I prefer that you mix the mash with the flour first before you start adding water. Sometimes you may not need it, sometimes you may, like in this situation. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water at a time, about maybe 1 tablespoon at a time. And it's coming together. I think I need a little more. This is about the consistency that you need. Like a regular bread dough. It's not going to be as soft, but that's okay. So I'm just going to give it a light knead, not too much, don't knead it too much, just a light knead. And just form it into a log shape, like that. And then divide it into about 5 to 6 rounds. So just form them into a round, like so. So what we're going to do is we will let them rest. I'll cover it with a paper towel and let it rest so that the dough can relax a bit and get softer. Rest for about 5 minutes, and then I'll roll it out to a round. Fry it on the stove with just light olive oil. You may not even need the oil at all, but I like it for a little bit of added flavor. And then you fry it until it's brown on each side, 1 to 2 minutes, and that's it. Your bread is ready. Okay, so our dough has been resting, or our dough balls have been resting for about 5 to 7 minutes now, and see, it's considerably softer. So just dust your counter surface or your chopping board with a little bit of flour, roll it into a disc, form it into a disc, then grab your rolling pin, just roll it into a round. So if you want to make like a sandwich wrap from this bread recipe, I suggest you make these two. This recipe would make about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you'd get 3 rounds instead of 6 to make a decent size for a sandwich bread. Meanwhile, I'll just preheat my pan. Turn on my heat on medium. Yeah. Whilst it gets hot, and then I'll just keep rolling my flatbread out. So this is about the thickness that you need. It's a decent size thickness. So our pan is nice and hot now. I'm going to go ahead and add our rolled flatbread dough to it and leave it for about 1 to 2 minutes. It will start to bubble at the top, and then we'll flip it another 1 to 2 minutes, and then it will be ready. So this is the kind of bubble that you should expect to have, and that's almost always an indication that it's time to flip it. And nice and brown, and see how it's puffing up. So beautiful. So when you've made the last flatbread, it should look something like this. You see all these grill spots, grill marks? They are so yummy. The trick to keeping these nice and soft and warm so they don't dry out is after you cook each flatbread, you place the other on top, like so, stack them up, and then cover it with a slightly damp towel until you're ready to serve. And then it keeps the moisture in and keeps it nice and soft so it doesn't dry out until you're ready to serve. Like this. And here we are, our Mediterranean inspired lunch. So easy to make and definitely a crowd pleaser. We've got our easy lamb köfte or lamb meatballs kebab, the refreshing chickpea salad, and this super easy flatbread. Look how soft it is. So this is how I like to do it. See? And I use that as my utensil. I'm gonna scoop my salad like that. That was a big bite, but it's mine, okay? And go in again. See how easy. You don't need rice all the time. Sometimes make sweet potato flatbread, okay? Very easy to make. Anyway, long story short, this is easy to make. If you follow the recipe, you can get it like this or even better. I'm so happy you were able to join me in making this Mediterranean inspired lunch. I'm confident that you can make all these three components or at least one or two of them. And the great thing about this is you can make this salad on its own and have it as a snack or even a main meal. You can make this lamb and have it with jollof or another rice dish. You can make this sweet potato bread and have it as a snack or eat it with salsa or guacamole or a hummus dip. Even though I made these as a meal, you can actually make each of them separately and enjoy them with other meals. I'm so happy you were able to join me again. Thank you so much, and make a date with me another time for another easy, delicious, foolproof recipe. Have a nice day.